Hi.
Hello. How are
How are
you?
you? You first.
We always, it's always like who's going to say it first. But I'm well. The sun is out here. And it's very nice. How
It's
are you?
lovely. It's so nice out. Oh,
Yeah.
just walking around in a t-shirt yesterday. I was thinking this is
Were you? Earlier this week I wore thermals thinking that we were still in like January cold sky weather and then I just boiled. So thermals are officially gone.
yeah.
That's my
Oh.
indication. Yeah.
Okay, well, this week we are
Yeah.
discussing Thomas Gainsborough's painting of Cornard wood from 1748, which is in the
Mhm.
National Gallery of London. And the sources for this week's episode are, as always, Wikipedia,
Mhm.
page on the artist, although the Wikipedia page is quite heavily focused on his portraiture.
Mhm.
Um, I know objectively, though I know he's a portrait painter, I've always been doing my research around the landscape, so I always find it really jarring when it's just pictures and pictures and pictures of portraits.
Mhm.
So yeah, it was a bit of like a, oh yeah.
A reminder.
A reminder. Oh yeah, he was mostly a portrait painter. And then also the National Gallery website, their page on the painting, the Gainsborough's house website, which is the museum dedicated to him in Suffolk, and the Victoria and Albert Museum website, a page on his showbox.
Mm.
Would you like to describe the painting?
Yes. So this is a painting of a wood, and it's autumnal. I would say autumnal colors. There's very much like the foreground, middle ground, and background. So in the foreground, there's a lot of shrubbery. It's quite open actually. And there is to the left, there's a man bundling up a big pile of branches and wood. So there's been surrounded by a few logs that have also been cut down. There's also a dog sleeping near him. Um, and then I would say the middle ground, that's where the trees really are. There's one tree just off center to the right, which is the one closest to the viewer. And I'm terrible with the types of trees, the names of trees, but it's looks quite gnarled, old, but it's got this beautiful, almost now yellowy, orangey foliage. And then the light is really shining onto that tree and onto a path to its left, where there are a number of figures. So there's a woman sat down with a dog by the side of this path. There's a peasant man followed by a dog. There are two donkeys, a man with a shovel, and I really like this cow that is hidden to the left of the painting. This cow is kind of hidden behind a tree. And then this path weaves round, and in the background, far in the distance, through seen in a clearing through the trees, is a little town and I think church tower. And there's light shining onto that as well. Also to the right of the painting, there's some water. It's really interesting trying to describe a landscape because your eyes are dragged into different places.
Yeah.
And I mean the path is the thing that's where your eye is guided. But then, like I say, there's the light shining across. Um, the water to the right of the painting it's almost like a pond or a marsh, but that's more in shadow.
Mm.
So the left hand side of the painting has more illuminated trees and the activity. And also the sky seems to be there's a very cloudy sky above. It's quite grey, but there's light shining from behind, so the sun is coming through. And I think that's what also is reflected in the background with that light shining onto the little town.
Mm.
So yeah, it's very um it's very English wood, I would say. I've definitely been on a lot of walks around woods like this,
Yeah.
especially as a kid. Yeah.
Okay. Well, this, as usual, I'm going to do a bit of biography and then cut in
Hmm.
where the painting fits into
Hmm.
the bio and then round up. Usually that's quite easy, but this week it's a really early work, so a little bit of
Oh,
bio,
okay.
a lot about the painting, and then a little bit more bio
Okay.
this week. So Thomas Gainsborough is one of Britain's best known landscape painters. As I mentioned, he's actually even more famous as a portrait painter, but I'm going to be
Mhm.
focusing primarily on landscape today.
Can I ask, is that because you kind of prefer his landscapes a bit more?
It's because when I first started reading about him and researching him, I was primarily a landscape
Okay.
draftsperson.
Yeah.
So I was mostly interested in the landscapes and the fact
Mm.
that Gainsborough, for his whole life, professed that landscape was his main interest and that the portraits were very frustrating
No.
to him.
Okay,
So,
that's really interesting. Okay, yeah. So
so I
it's
will
like you're
touch on that as
standing up
well.
for his personal
Yeah,
approach.
because
Yeah.
he paved the way for artists such as Constable and Turner to be
Mm.
landscape painters.
Okay.
Um, because as after he passed away, his landscapes became more famous and
Interesting.
promoted more as well as his portraits. So he really wasn't able to be a primarily landscape painter, but he
Mm.
did pave the way for later artists.
I see. Okay. I thought it might be that he was a portrait painter and that was his main, interest and passion. And then you were like, oh, but I really like the landscape. But it's really
Oh,
interesting that he himself was like, actually, landscape is my thing.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
cool. Sorry,
Which doesn't put any, I don't think any tar on the portraits. They are incredible
no, of
portraits.
course. Yeah.
But yeah, should be studied separately.
Mm.
So, he was a founding member of the Royal Academy of Arts and was a portrait and landscape painter, draftsman, and printmaker.
Mm.
Gainsborough was born in Sudbury in Suffolk. He was the youngest son of a weaver and maker of woolen goods. He also showed signs of becoming a promising artist even at a really young age. Age 10, he was painting small portraits, landscapes, and even a self-portrait.
Mm.
He spent a lot of time sketching in the woods and the fields around his home, and he left home in around 1740 to pursue the study of art in London. He trained under a French painter and engraver called, I don't know if I should say this with the French way, but we would say Hubert, but I'm sure it's Hubert,
Okay, yeah.
Francois Gravelot. Although his instructor was introduced, through his instructor, sorry, he was introduced to the artistic community around St. Martin's Lane, in Soho, which was known for its association with artists like Hogarth and Francis Hayman.
Okay.
So he had a little foothold in
Mm.
artistic society around that time. In 1746, Gainsborough married Margaret Burr, and she was the illegitimate daughter of the third Duke of Beaufort. And she had a £200 annuity settled on her, which I think is like a yearly sum to be paid.
Mm.
His work at that time consisted mostly of landscape paintings and wasn't selling that well in London. So he returned to Sudbury in 1748-49 and concentrated on painting portraits, but also still landscapes as well going on.
Mm.
It was at this time that Cornard wood was painted, and it's a large scale painting depicting the wood outside the village of Great Cornard, 2 miles from Sudbury. The wood was common land, so it's not privately owned, and the local villagers had the right to use the land, to roam the land, which
Mm.
is what you can see depicted in the painting. So they would gather wood, graze cattle, or simply, had the right to walk through,
Mm.
which is like an ancient right in the UK to certain pieces of land.
Mm.
Gainsborough chooses to depict all those activities. And at the time, those sorts of figures in landscape painting would have been referred to as stuffage.
Or like stuff.
Stuffage. They were sort of, they're not real, they're not portraits of real
Yeah.
people. They're used to populate a landscape painting.
Mm.
So I think it's sort of, that's kind of a differentiation. They were used for scale and for,
Mm.
interest and
Mm.
creating areas in the work to move your eye around, but you
Yeah.
wouldn't consider them to be portraits.
Mm.
I don't think it's a word that we'd come up with these days, but yes. Stuffage.
But it is what I was doing. I think it's really interesting about landscape when you're trying to describe it as well. Where's your eye drawn to? And so often it's animals, or people.
Mm.
Obviously, light plays a really important part, but yeah, it's something that grounds you. So it still works a lot.
Yeah,
And it's the thing that we want to describe, rather than the the ferns in the corner.
yeah,
It's like we're not probably not going to describe those first.
yeah. We're definitely drawn to the figures and
Mm,
animals first,
yeah.
rather than trying to describe the whole. So I did actually a small research project on Gainsborough like years ago, like maybe 10 years ago,
Yeah.
actually maybe more. And I sort of remembered this quote, but I can't find it. So I'm not saying this is what Gainsborough said. I think it might have been something someone else said about his
Mm,
work. I'm not 100% sure, but it was referring to the stuffage in
hmm
a landscape. And the idea was that those figures in a landscape should be like grapes on a vine, um, as
mm,
opposed to separate grapes on a table. That the painting itself, through like pathways and, details, should connect each figure in some way to draw the
mm.
eye around. And
Yeah.
I thought it was a really specific metaphor, and I remembered it, but I obviously don't remember who said it. But
Yeah.
I remember it came up when I was researching Gainsborough, so I believe there's some
Mm.
relevance.
And it's stuck in your head for
Yes,
all that
yeah.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I think it's an interesting, it's a very visual metaphor, so you can really
Yeah.
like what the idea is, and particularly in this painting when you can see pathways or a line of grass or a shaft of light, and you think about how all those things connect the figures in a
Yeah.
landscape. I think uh, it's a good metaphor.
Yeah.
So Gainsborough wrote a letter in much later in his life in 1788 that said that he painted the picture in Sudbury in the year 1748 while he was learning his craft, and that the sale of it enabled his father to send him to London, which confused me a little bit because I read that he went to London in 1740. So there's some,
Mm.
this is much later on in his life, and 1788, I believe, is the year he passed away. So it's
Mm.
a little bit of a maybe
Yeah.
fluffing things up a little
Yeah.
to, and romanticizing things. So he was a prolific letter writer, and there's definitely a lot of like beautiful language and poetry in the letters as well. So it's
Mm.
sort of would make sense if that doesn't quite tally either way.
Mm.
He said he was pleased with the painting's schoolboy style because it showed the strength of his lifelong commitment to landscape painting.
Schoolboy style.
I know. I guess that's
Right.
his schoolboy style. Definitely wasn't mine.
Yeah.
He
Okay.
confessed that though there is very little idea of composition in the picture, the touch and closeness of nature are equal to any of my later productions. And
Mm.
he said that in the intervening 40 years, Cornard wood had passed through the hands of 20 or so picture dealers, and at one point he'd even bought this painting back for himself for 19 guineas.
Oh,
So
okay.
it
So you
was a
really
painting on
liked
the
it.
move. He did really like it. He referred to it in his letters. He bought it back at one point.
Yeah.
And the painting later down the line after he'd passed away ended up in the possession of the uncle of John Constable.
Oh, okay.
Which both from Suffolk, so perhaps there was some affinity with
Hmm
the view as well. And
Mm.
Constable was born about 10 miles from Gainsborough's birthplace and was a big
Okay.
admirer of his landscapes. So it may have been actually that Constable recognized the scene and gave the picture its title,
Yeah.
because following the sale history, there wasn't a specific title until around that time. So
Interesting.
yeah,
Okay.
it may have been constables traveling around the Suffolk
Mm.
area and painting that gave the title to the work. We don't know,
Wow.
but it's a
Cool.
possibility.
Nice.
The sky in the painting has faded to grey after the Prussian blue pigment has changed with the passage of time. He mixed a small amount of Prussian blue with white and charcoal, and for some reason the blue has faded, which we know because the top of the painting, it was relined, and the top of the painting is just slightly folded over the stretcher, and we
Uh-huh.
can see that there was a lot more blue in the painting previously.
Yeah. There's also a very faint line, right? Like chunk at the top of the sky.
Oh,
I
I
don't
don't
know if
know.
that's just me. Like if I'm just obviously
Looking
always
again.
I'm zooming in on the National Gallery website
Same. Okay.
and it's very faint, but you can make
Oh
out
yeah, I
a
see.
kind
I
of
see what you mean.
border.
I don't know whether that's it or not, because they would have
I
had to
mean,
put on another stretcher. I don't know if they've done that.
or it might be that that was at one point stretched, but for less time, and then
Hmm.
it was re-stretched again.
Yeah. Well,
Because
from
it's not
what,
notably more blue, it's just a little bit.
yeah, I don't think it had a huge amount of blue in it, but I do think that there was more blue
Yeah.
present. It
Yeah.
wasn't a significantly blue sky, but it
Yeah.
was apparently the blue that's mixed with other pigments has survived, but the blue that was mixed with white and charcoal has faded.
Okay. Yeah, I mean the clouds are very grey and heavy.
Mm.
So having that blue sky, I think even a little bit more blue would make quite a difference.
I think it would make more sense as well with the sort of passages of sunlight in the
Mm.
foreground
Yeah.
because yeah, it just sort of matches more with the nature of the scene.
Yeah.
It's quite an impressive. I mean, when you see this painting in real life, when light like floods into the gallery,
Mm.
it is as if the picture has this its own sort of internal light. It's really quite incredible the way that it lights up
Wow.
in sunlight itself.
Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
Wow. I need to go at that time because I remember seeing this, I think a couple of years ago now at the National Gallery. I'm usually in the Renaissance parts.
Yeah.
So, but I wandered in and saw this, and I did spend quite a lot of time looking at it. And the thing as well is the detail because it's so big. It's not you can really go up to it and look, and the amount of detail and that yeah, the thickness of the oil paint and all of those colors, and it's just really, really worth seeing in
Yeah.
real life. I know they all are, but I think when it's a bigger painting, especially,
Mm.
I think,
No,
yeah.
it's beautiful painting.
Yeah.
I wouldn't look at it and think, oh, that's very early schoolboy work.
No, no, God. Imagine.
Yeah. So, um, the art historian Andrew Moore did a study of Dutch and Flemish paintings in East Anglian collections. East Anglia is the region in which Gainsborough was born, for anyone not listening in the UK.
Mm,
Um, and it highlighted an increasing popularity of those Dutch landscapes with English collectors during the 18th century. Dealers stocked Dutch pictures since they had a wide appeal to those who preferred a more recognizable reality as opposed to that sort of Claude Lorraine style,
yeah.
sort of hyper beautified landscape that was also really popular. Growing up in Sudbury, Gainsborough would have seen Dutch paintings in East Anglian collections and probably knew of others in the form of engravings. And he was heavily inspired by painters such as Jacob van Ruysdael. He had contact. Sorry, I'm moving on to a different point. But yeah, that is a
Yeah.
his influence with Dutch landscape paintings is something that you can really visually track. And I
Yeah.
think it's quite interesting that there was sort of like the strata of people interested in these you know, making their Palladian houses and their Claude Lorraine gardens. And
Mm,
then there's people who are, like Constable and Gainsborough, who are really interested in a landscape they recognize. And it's interesting because you said when you were describing it that you recognize that landscape as an English landscape. And
mm,
I think that's what was really important to Gainsborough was
yeah.
not creating this kind of mythical vision, but actually focusing on something that really felt like it was home.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Neat.
Gainsborough had contact with various dealers from the 1740s, particularly with Panton Batiou, was a Suffolk-born dealer in London,
Mhm.
and he handled several of Gainsborough's early Suffolk landscapes, and he commissioned engravings of them as well. In
Okay.
1748, when Cornard wood was, in Gainsborough's own phrase, first delivered by me to go in search of those who had taste enough to admire it.
Oh my God.
I love that quote. It's likely that he took it to Panton and Batu, who bought it outright or on commission and placed it for sale in their shop in
Mhm.
Old Compton Street in Soho.
Mhm.
So yeah,
That is very funny. I mean, it's that classic. Um, I know it's the language of the time that also just makes it sound so pompous,
yes,
but really it is. It
delivered by
is.
me to those who have taste enough to admire
Yeah.
it.
It's good. I think more artists should. I don't know if you need a confidence boost. It's like, because it is also subjective. It's like, well,
Be more Gainsborough.
might be more Gainsborough. We do seem to have, though, quite often these quotes from the artists, which tend to be really big-headed.
Yeah.
It's very funny.
And I wonder because, you hear about these artists really scratching a living until they get to a certain point, but then you read these quotes that are
Yeah.
very confident.
Yeah. Yeah. Very. Yeah.
So the art critic Roger Fry said of his work in 1934 when he was
Mm.
discussing the weaknesses and the strengths.
Yeah.
He said, "It is in effect a transposition of a Dutch landscape into an English mood, and with a freshness and delicacy of feeling which is entirely personal to Gainsborough, and with that a franker acceptance of the colour of nature than Ruysdael allowed. Beside them, no doubt would it look a little fragile and over subtle, it lacks their forcible construction and vigorous relief. But though it's not overemphasized, the relief and the spatial construction are none the less felt, and perhaps that very delicacy and overstatement of contrast conduces to the dreamy tranquillity of its mood."
Mm.
Which is just a nice.
Yeah.
It sort of sounds negative and then it goes positive. Sorry, my
Yeah.
microphone's deciding to take a walk.
It's just kind of gets slowly getting lower and
Just
lower.
slowly sinking. I'm not really sure.
I mean, I can hear you great. So,
Oh, well, that's all right then. I'll just tighten it
yeah.
over. Sorry. I'm going to leave this in as well. Life. Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
I think that's a bit better. No, it's not. Oh well. Anyway,
I can hear you well, very well.
as long as you can hear me, that's
Yeah.
fine.
But the also I really don't know a lot about Dutch landscape, but I think they also had, and they may not have used the same word, but the stuffage of
Yeah.
the people,
Yeah.
that reminds me of it as well. The kind of peasant stock, peasant population um
Yeah.
of the landscapes, yeah. As opposed to the kind of more classical heroes and mythological figures, which would be in the Claude Lorraine
Or people
modern
in
work.
front of their country homes, like the actual owners of that land.
Yeah,
There's a
true.
difference between the people who traverse it and the people who own it.
True. Yeah.
Sorry, my microphone is like fully falling down now.
No, that's fine. I've also got my cat on my lap, so it's all like
It's all chaos at
out of
once.
the outer frame is coming in
Oh God,
or out.
it's like getting worse. I'm gonna actually have to stand up.
Okay.
It's gonna fall on me if I don't do something.
Is it on a big stand?
No, it's just clipped onto something, but it's decided to like slowly think. Not really sure. Sorry.
No worries.
Okay, I think I figured it out. Oh dear.
It would be quite funny if it just fell onto you.
Yeah, exactly. There we go. That's got a bit more.
Oh yeah, that's perfect.
Oh dear. Okay, so back to Gainsborough.
Yes.
Moving on from Cornard Wood. In 1752, Gainsborough and his wife and two daughters moved to Ipswich so he could pursue a more lucrative portrait commission based
Mm,
practice. And he did manage to expand his client base, but not quite to the level of society portraits and gentry that he would have
mm,
done if he was living elsewhere,
okay.
and that could offer his family a really comfortable living. And after 7 years in Ipswich, the family decamped to Bath. Here he was able to live with his family at the Circus, which is that famous
Oh yeah.
circle of houses, historic
Mhm.
townhouses in Bath. And there's his house, I think it was number 17, now has a blue plaque commemorating him. And he started submitting works to the Royal Academy exhibitions. This is the really early days of the Royal Academy.
Mm.
And the exhibitions helped enhance his reputation, and he was invited to become a founding member of the Academy in 1769. But he did have quite an uneasy relationship with them, and he stopped showing twice with them, with due to ongoing disagreements, mostly with Sir Joshua Reynolds, who was the head of the Academy at the
Oh,
time,
really?
and mostly quarrels over where his pictures were hung, which I think was like a bit of a constant issue. You hear about Turner having those issues and Constable having those, so many artists having these problems because of the kind of salon hang, which is when
Mm.
works hang one on top of the other, like a
Yeah.
wall. I know you know, but for our listeners.
No, but also I with the Royal Academy Summer Show, they still do that, right? Where they
They
have
do. And it is a big
uh
deal where you are hung, whether you're on the
yeah.
eye line, below the eye line, right down on the ground, or all the way up in the
But
gods where no one can see.
sometimes I think I imagine the worst is being all the way up in the gods because craning your neck
Yeah.
up the
Being
whole
all the way
time
up at the top is the worst because at least if you're low, someone can bob down and actually get on the eye line. If you're high, then it's
is
a
impossible.
non-starter.
Yeah.
So yeah, he did show them again later on, and then he completely cut
Mm.
ties in terms of exhibiting there. During his time in Bath, he did begin to express his dissatisfaction with portrait painting. As we all know, he was a prolific letter writer, and his popularity in the genre of portrait painting was taking him away from focusing on landscapes.
Mm.
In a letter to a friend in the 1760s, Gainsborough wrote, "I'm sick of portraits and wish very much to take my viol de gamba, which is a musical instrument, and walk off to some sweet village where I can paint landscapes," which is what they called landscapes at the time.
Landscapes.
Yeah, landscapes,
That's really nice.
which I just imagine people chucking things in, but that's not what they meant. And enjoy the fag end of life in quietness and ease. I did go off on a tiny sidebar with the phrase the fag end of life because
Nice.
because in the 20th century we know that phrase the fag end to be the end of a cigarette if you live in the
Yeah.
UK. However, in Gainsborough's time, it may well be that cigarettes were barely a
Yeah.
thing. And actually, it could have referred to the last piece of cloth on a roll, which makes so much sense for Gainsborough because his father was a weaver and a maker of woolen goods. And I just
Mm.
thought I'd tie that in because I think it's actually a quote of his that comes up a lot, and I thought that was interesting.
So the fag end of life meaning the rest of my days?
Yeah, it means the tail end, the final bit, the last
Yeah.
segment in some yeah, but
Yeah,
he's
so the
probably referring
the
to the end of cloth on a roll.
so if he's saying I want to go to a village and enjoy basically my retirement
He wants to
almost.
go to a village, play his viol, and he had 5 viols, so he was quite committed to the instrument, and
Hmm.
paint landscapes and be left alone.
Sounds good. Sounds
Mm,
good.
sounds like a great plan.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, he moved to London
Oh yeah.
in 1774 into a house in Pall Mall, which is very central.
Mm.
He briefly began exhibiting at the RA again and then fell out with them again several years later. And it
Okay.
was at this time that he'd really mastered his signature portrait style of placing his figures in a landscape setting that often was painted quite loosely and had
Yeah.
this kind of dreamlike, imagined quality to it.
That's what I think of most with Gainsborough, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He does have lots of early portraits that are in the landscape, but the people are quite awkward and they look a little
Mm.
like sort of stick people.
Mm.
Like they'll be sitting on a log, but a leg sort of going out at like an awkward angle. It doesn't look completely
Yeah.
comfortable, the imagination of them in the landscape, whereas the
Yeah.
later works are very much people draped on tree trunks and it all feels very like the brush mark of the landscape matches with the brush mark of the people and it's all
Yeah.
very one, it's meshed. He's figured it
Mm.
out.
Yeah. Interesting.
And then in 1780, he painted portraits of King George III and Queen Charlotte. So he really was at the
Okay.
top of his game. And it is said that although Gainsborough was the royal family's favourite portraitists, they were obliged to give the job of royal portraitist to Gainsborough's rival and the Academy president, Sir
Mm.
Joshua Reynolds.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that
What?
went.
But why were they obliged to?
I assume because they'd sirred him and
And
he's
he's the
head of
Royal
the Academy.
Academy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it would look like a massive slight. And,
Yeah.
it's the Royal Academy, so it's endorsed by the royals.
It's funny, I kind of forget that now because even though it's literally in the name, but now the Royal Academy to me feels like it's another art institution.
It doesn't feel very royal. You don't see the
Royal.
king there all the time
But
around.
now, yeah, but then obviously it's still pretty early days.
Yeah.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. And there were lots of art schools, little art schools around London. So the Royal Academy becoming the endorsed one and the like, all of that sort of him
Yeah.
becoming a sir, that's much more of a thing, I think.
Yeah.
Um, So, in his later years, Gainsborough returned to painting more landscapes, and in the 1780s, he used a device called a showbox to compose landscapes and display them backlit on glass. So, he would paint
So
little
cool.
landscapes on glass, and then they were viewed inside a box, sort of like a magic lantern, where you would put your eyes up and
Mhm.
you can see inside these scenes
Yeah.
he's created, which I sort of, I guess, are for his amusement and the amusement of guests and people coming to the studio can enjoy these little landscape slides that he's made.
I love that. I think that's so cool. And it reminds me immediately, I thought of Magic Lanterns.
Mm.
And the slight side note, but there's the most amazing pre-cinema museum in Padua in like just near Venice. And it's filled with one person's collection of like all of these pre-cinema things, and they have loads of magic lanterns. But it's amazing when you think of the as a family tree almost. But even something like Gainsborough's, because oh, sorry,
Those
sounds
cattails put
ridiculous.
across the screen.
It's the tail and also just this like furry flab coming. Just getting involved. But yeah, it's so interesting when you think of it like a family tree, because even that of like looking in a little box, seeing a landscape, trying to make something three-dimensional,
Yeah,
turning two-dimensional images into three-dimensional, because you wouldn't think there was that longer history of
yeah.
the moving image or things like that. So that's so cool. They used to have also like a Dutch do you remember in the National Gallery they had a Dutch
It was like a
huge
viewing box, and you could look in and see.
as a kid, that was the best thing ever. Um so was it a bit like that? His what's it called? His show box.
I'm not sure, but it is currently in the V&A collection, and you can go and view it
Okay,
and learn
I
more
will
about
be
it.
going.
So he
What?
also would
Yeah.
paint landscapes at night by candlelight, and these would be his imagined setup. So he'd use a tabletop and things like broccoli and mirrors, stones, cheese for big rocks.
That's
And
so
he'd
cool.
light them with candles and then paint the scenes as
That's
his
so cool.
to get like this sort of eerie, warm lighting and this
Yeah.
these beautiful shadows that you'll see in some of the later landscapes. You can kind of tell that they've been
They're a
created.
broccoli. It's a
That's a
broccoli.
broccoli tree. He does have just a few broccoli trees that you can kind of.
That's really cool. I love that.
So both these things are something that gives Gainsborough that recognition as being, although quite conventional, also quite an experimentational artist for his
Yeah.
time.
Especially because that's coming later in his life. I mean, I suppose maybe experimentation is easier if you're a more established artist as
If you're
well.
getting
Like
more per
that.
picture, then you can put those
Yeah.
gaps in between works to do the things you want to do.
Yeah. And it's interesting that he had kind of figured out, I suppose, an in-between, a happy medium for him of figures in landscapes.
Yeah,
Um, but so his love of this particular painting, though, it continued through his life.
yeah,
Yeah,
because he refers to it in later letters.
yeah.
Um, I believe the letter where he in 1788 where he's talking about it being in the schoolboy style was because there was a piece being it had been bought by someone important, and there was a piece being written in a magazine about that work, and they'd asked him for a comment, and
Mm.
apparently he went off on one and wrote this really like flowery description that wasn't used, and the letter wasn't published till after his death because he sort of
It was
overrode the brief a little bit.
like, yeah, I mean, it's just went over the word count kind of
Just a tad, just
situation, just a tad. Yeah.
I mean, they
Yeah.
asked, so it's on them.
Yeah. Wow. And
So,
so what happened to him
so
after?
Gainsborough died of cancer on the 2nd of August, 1788, at the age of
Mm.
61. And
Mm.
according to his daughter Peggy, his last words were Van Dyke.
Iconic.
Absolutely iconic.
Why would
Top
those be
list.
your last words? I'm sorry. Like, obviously, great, very cool, but really? Is that
What was it that
really your last words? It's
Turner
not even
said the
like,
sun is God or something? Yeah.
who said that?
I think it was Turner. He said something along the lines of
Okay.
the sun is God.
My favorite, which again, I don't know if we can ever really be entirely sure of last words, but my favorite is Oscar Wilde's,
Oh, really?
where he says, um, I'm, it's something like I'm in a duel to the death with the wallpaper, or something like it's either me or the wallpaper that has
Oh,
to go first.
my favorite is I think it was is it I might be King George the Third, but I'm not sure. But Mad
Mm.
King George, apparently when he was dying, his wife said, "Oh, when you are recovered, darling, we shall go to Bognor." And apparently his last words are insert swear word beginning with B, Bognor. And that's his last words, apparently.
No. So it's like that's really funny.
I don't know if that's true, but I like that.
Yeah, that is, yeah.
So it was
So his
Gainsborough's.
last words were Van Dyke. Sorry, that's so funny.
I mean, it's better to have something memorable than nothing at all, I guess.
Yeah, maybe that's what he was thinking. I'll just say
And it was his express wish to be buried near his friend Joshua Kirby, who was a landscape painter as well.
it. Mm.
And later his wife and nephew, who was also a painter, Gainsborough Dupont, were interred
Great.
with him. And they are buried in the churchyard of St Anne's in Kew, which was in Surrey until 1965, and now it's part of London.
Yeah.
Different sources will say he's buried in Surrey or London, but it's the same place.
Yeah.
In 2011, there was an appeal to pay the costs of restoration on his tomb, and the tomb was restored in 2012. And a street in Kew, Gainsborough Road, is named after him. And I will end on a quote from the painter John Constable, who said, "I fancy I see Gainsborough in every hedge and hollow tree."
That's very nice.
And that is the extent of my sort of Gainsborough overview. I know there's a lot more to be read and said, but that's my little overview.
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it. I'm gonna have to go back and see it immediately.
I definitely want to do an episode at some point on his paintings of his daughters because they are
Yeah.
just beautiful. And in terms of portraiture and portraiture of children, they are really
Yeah.
sensitive and stunning works. I don't want to give the impression that I don't give like kudos to his amazing portrait works. I just view them very separately as two separate enterprises.
Yeah.
But they there are some really amazing portraits, particularly of his daughters, that it would be really great to come back to at some
Mhm.
point in the
That would be
podcast.
amazing.
And we don't have to do a whole bio.
Yeah.
Just
True.
refer you to episode, I think this is 55, I'm not sure.
Wow.
Four, maybe. But
Mm.
yeah.
Great.